We have to talk about Steve Young interviewed Brock Purdy for 49ers.com. I thought Steve did a great job. He's a really good interviewer.
It was a very, very good interview. He did a great job.
Yeah, about 25 minutes. What were your major takeaways from this interview?
I had three takeaways that I had. That one of them is just a personal one. It's kind of why I identify with Brock is just through his faith. And Brock is not afraid to share his faith. Any interview he ever does where it's a sit down interview, he will talk about it. And I respect that. I love that about him. So that was just a personal point.
And it resonated with Steve,
means
right?
Anything,
it was like,
100%.
I always feel like that was my superpower. I always feel like that was so grounding, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I like that because what I find interesting about Brock is as a person, because of his faith, he knows exactly who he is. And he said something where it was, hey, I don't need this, essentially. If I lost it tomorrow, God would give me a new mission. I'm fine with that. But as a player, I feel like he's got a conflict in who he is. So as a person, he knows exactly who he is. But as a player, I think he's conflicted internally because he talks about how in college and in high school, he was forced to be that guy. And you see it show up all over his film. Talked about it a million times when he was a rookie. Like, hey, he has some Jimmy moments. You see it all over his college film. That's my biggest concern. And he recognizes that. Yes, I would put the ball in harm's way. I felt like I had to go win games. Now I'm on a team where I don't have to do that. But you can tell he struggles with that because he is the gunslinger. He does feel like that's his innate ability and that's a part of who he is. But he has to kind of control that. It's almost like the Incredible Hulk, right? You can't turn green. You can't get mad. You have to control the anger. Otherwise, you turn into the Hulk. And that's what he is as a football player. He has to suppress his gunslinger mindset and try to play within the system that Kyle wants him to play within with this bevy of talent. And that's what will make him most successful. So those are two things for me. I've got another one, but I'll save them just in case. I don't. No,
you keep going. I'm listening. I'm loving this.
Okay. And I've got one more. He talked about how Kyle showed belief in him. And that meant the world to him, he said. And the reason I bring this up is because this was something that we talked about in the offseason. I remember saying that if the 49ers truly believe he's the franchise guy, you have to get rid of Trey Lance. Just like I thought if they felt Trey Lance was the franchise guy, they should have gotten rid of Jimmy. And when you say things like that, you always get the rebuttal of, well, these are professionals. They're getting paid millions. They should perform no matter what. And my retort back to that is, well, they're also human beings. And when he says, hey, he showed faith in me, that meant the world to me. That gave me the confidence to be the player that I am. That right there shows the human element. All of these guys need a coach that can believe in them and buy into them. And if they don't, the chances of being successful are a lot lower. Brock has that with Shanahan. I think that's great. We see it with Shanahan. We've talked about it all throughout the season. But for Brock, that was very, very important that he got that buy-in from Shanahan and it allowed him to be who he is. And I think that was fantastic.
Yeah, having them sit there across from each other kind of dawned on me a little bit that Purdy's kind of like Steve, not Joe. I mean, they're both men of faith and they both probably care a little too much. Like Joe could just let things go and be great at the end. Whereas I remember Steve would press. Steve would be very amped up. And Brock, we don't see it very much because he's always winning. But when he has been in tough situations early in games, when he's not winning, we've seen him press. He's admitted to pressing, and Kyle says he cares too much, which is better than not caring enough. So I think that's kind of interesting in them. And you heard Steve say, like, man, you're just so unbothered. You're so unaffected. And I was thinking, I don't know. Like, he has to prove that now. We'll find out about that right now. And I think that's what's so cool about Brock Purdy's story. It's just about the greatest story of all time. But without that Super Bowl ring to validate it, he's not Kurt Warner. And he has to get it now. I mean, he doesn't have to get it now, but he's on the precipice of getting it right now. And we've already crowned him. You have Steve Young interviewing him himself, but he hasn't done it yet. That being said, it took Steve a while too, right?
Yeah, here's the thing. When people say that they read mean things about them or things that they don't deem as true and they're unbothered by it, I disagree with that. I think you either don't read it, you don't put yourself in the situation to read it and be in front of it. And of course you're not bothered because you don't even hear the noise. Or you start scrolling through the comments and you're reading everything and it is bothering you. You're human. Like, that's a human trait. You're going to be perturbed a little bit. And one thing I found interesting, and of course, when he's out there in front of you guys, it's, I don't hear any of that. I don't see any of that. Reality is he admitted to that he does hear those things. And so, yeah, of course he's going to be bothered. Right. Now, I'm not saying it takes away from his performance.
Didn't he say that one of the big learning experiences for him this year was how to tune that out?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't he say that? I mean, I think what he said with the Ravens game was it was built up too much.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know.
Well, he talked about pressure, and Steve kept like, "Oh, you're just so great and you're ironclad." And he's like, "Well, there have been times where the moment's been too big for me. Like,
I love that about Brock when he put.
I love that about. I love that about him
because you could be like, "Yeah, I am that good," but he's like, "Whoa, whoa, dude! Like,
no, I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm human, man. I'm human. It would be concerning if there was never a moment that was too big for you. That's how you learn to perform in those moments, is by kind of shattering a little bit and learning from that. It's all a learning experience. So whether that's in the pros or high school or middle, whatever that is, there's some time in your life where you've been rejected or things didn't go the way that you had planned, and you had to build yourself back up from that. And those are all learning experiences. And I love that he didn't just act as if, oh, no, I've always been built like this. I've never cared. It's like, well, actually, the moment has been too big for me, Steve. I'm going to push back a little bit. And I've learned from that. And that's what allows me to be the player that I am today. So I love the honesty from him.
He said one other thing that really got me. This was a good interview. Steve, I got to give you credit, man. He said, how did you know when you really won over the team? And Brock got into it. And one of the things he mentioned was, once they saw I wasn't afraid to fail, they bought in. And it's such an interesting thing to say. Made me think of Trey, who may have been a little afraid to fail, a little afraid to pull the trigger.
Oh, yeah.
A little afraid to make a mistake. Got to be perfect. Whereas Brock comes in and has nothing to lose. Maybe that was one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because you talk about nothing to lose, and I'm going to draw the parallel back to this game where we're at today. The Packers are Brock Purdy a year ago, coming into that Miami game, where it's you can play as free as possible, because Brock Purdy didn't have anybody lingering over his shoulder. Who was there? There was nobody. Trey was done for the season. Jimmy was done for the season. It was you and no other option. So, I mean, you can play as free as you want. And now you're looking at a Packers team that's a whole team full of Brock Purdys at this point. They're the youngest team in the league. They've already made it further than they were supposed to. No pressure on them. And the interesting paradox is now Brock Purdy is what Trey Lance was, where all the pressure is on the world. Because when you went out last year, the team thought they would have won the Super Bowl if you had stayed healthy. They definitely believe that now. The path is clearer than it's ever been. Now, again, it doesn't mean he's not going to perform, but the pressure is certainly there, and it will be felt.
Here's why I'm very concerned about Brock Purdy this time around in the playoffs. As you said, last year, he was the 49ers' only hope. There's no one really behind him. This year, they have the second coming of Steve Young. I mean, we saw Steve Young interviewing him. Steve Young Jr. is on the bench. So, Brock, you have one bad quarter, watch out.
Steve Young Jr. is on the bench, and it's
Watch
Sam
out.
Darnold. You're right. You're absolutely right about that. No, listen, I think that's what is probably Brock's best strength to his game is his mental fortitude. I really believe that. Doesn't mean he can't get rattled. I think that he showed a little bit during that Ravens game where he was pressed, but I think that it's going to take a lot to get him to that moment. And I don't think that the playoffs this time around, even if there is more pressure, are going to be too much for him to handle. I think
I got a stat for you.
Yeah.
Brock Purdy has thrown no touchdown passes in back-to-back playoff games.
Oh, wow.
I think he's going to play really well in this game.
Well,
I think both him and
next
Love
game,
are light it
no
up.
way he's going to throw any touchdown passes because it's never happened.
I think it's going to be one of the best games. I think all these games are going to be really good. I'm excited. And what's one thing that's cool about Brock, of all the quarterbacks that are remaining, he's the only one that wasn't a first-round pick, which makes me feel like finding the next Brock Purdy is not going to happen. The Niners got so lucky. He should have been a first-round pick, even with his arm strength, deficit. So yeah, good for them.
The best game of the weekend is the Bills and the Chiefs. Like that's just as an outside fan, if you're not a fan of any of the teams remaining and you just want to watch football, but you could only choose one, that would be the game. Josh
Houston,
Allen, Patrick Mahomes,
going to be good too, though.
Well, next week, yeah.
So good.
Oh, yeah, the Houston. Yeah, is it though? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think we're selling. I really think that we're selling Baltimore short, man. I really. Did you see Lamar Jackson when he was asked about the 20 points? Did you see that? The way he reacted? He laughed. They're like, how confident are you? The offense has never scored more than 20 in the playoffs with you at the helm. How confident are you that you're going to score 20? And he just got this big grin on his face. He's like, confident, very confident, extremely confident. And then he just starts laughing.
I think he's going to do great. I think Stroud is going to do really well too.
Oh, Stroud's phenomenal. Stroud is he's on his way to being a superstar for sure. We'll see if he can, if he loses offensive coordinator, what that looks like. Once the defense has a year to catch up, but he has all the makings to be elite in this league for sure.
The only game that won't have like top level quarterback play is Detroit, Tampa, and those two guys are good too. I mean, I like Baker and Goff; they're not bad,
but they're even. Like it's an even quarterback matchup. So yeah, I enjoy it.
Tampa winning it, although I don't expect them to. But